But that year, I just remember it being so somber and nobody wanted to celebrate. It was very, and just like my heart breaking for that, and reading Matthew 11, right, where he says, "Come to me, all who are burdened and heavy laden." And it was out of this, so I wrote a song that's called just that, "Come to me," and it's very much came out of that conflict and that heartbreak.
Hey, welcome to Whitefield Community Church Mission Extra, and this is the second episode of this series that we have started, and we have been looking. The whole purpose is just kind of to look into God's mission, outside of the church, when His mission, when the gospel leaves these walls, and to kind of tell some of those stories. And one of the things we want to do is that not only highlight the ways that the church is being involved in our local community, but also to highlight some of the missionaries that we as a church support. And missions is kind of in the DNA of this church, and we've we support quite a few missionaries abroad, and as Pastor Nick and myself have both been on the mission field for a considerable amount of time, and so we've made a lot of contacts, and we just love to be involved in what God is doing, not only here in Longmont, but also abroad. And so today we have the privilege of having with us Jon Markey, who is pastor of the church in Ternopil, Ukraine. Welcome, John. Good to have you. John John and his wife Stephanie and their 6 kids, and his brother and his sister-in-law and their 2 kids were with us this past weekend and blessed the church with leading worship. And we're just really blessed to be able to support John and his family over there in the Ukraine and what God's doing in Ternopil. And I've visited Ternopil quite a few times, and him and I have been involved just in the worship ministry, doing worship things together, and also doing conferences together there in Ternopil. And but let's just go back to introduce you to our church and to whoever might be watching this podcast or listening to this podcast for that matter. Just kind of how you came to be a part, because you come kind of from a legacy of missions. You're with your mom and with your father, of course, and so just how did you come about to be in the Ukraine?
Yeah. So actually, not by choice. I was 6 years old when we moved over there in 1992, once the Soviet Union dissipated. And so my dad had made a trip, I think in 91, with a bunch of pastors, kind of a scouting kind of thing. They went to Kiev, Ukraine, they went to Russia. And I think he called from there and was just like, yeah, we're moving. And less than a year later, we were in the capital, Kiev, where we started a Calvary Chapel church, and that was my dad's vision, was just like start the first model church from which many others could kind of, branch out, and that's kind of what ended up happening. So initially for me personally, it was just like I was 6. I have a few memories of the States, but growing up was just all in Ukraine. So from preschool, went all the way through public school there, and then higher education, everything in Kiev. So that's kind of my hometown.
Yeah, and so you went to your higher education is in music, right?
Right, that's right. Piano performance.
Yeah. There at the Tchaikovsky Royal School of Music, is that what it's called?
I think it's the Tchaikovsky Academy of Music, yeah. So the Hlier Music College, and then the Tchaikovsky is where I got my master's, yeah.
And you did all of it in Russian?
All of it in Russian, yeah.
Russian,
so
okay.
All my school was in Ukrainian, because they actually took from 93, they removed Russian from the schools. If not familiar, Ukrainian is the official language, but everybody kind of speaks Russian, especially in central Ukraine and eastern. But then for the music college and then the academy, it's all of the textbooks, everything is still Russian from all these books from the 50s and stuff. So everything was in Russian again. So yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Wow, yeah, no. And I should mention that you have 6 kids, but you're also from a family of many
Yes.
children.
So I'm one of 9. When we moved, there were 8 of us. And my brother Aaron, who was with us this Sunday, he was 5 months old when we moved to Ukraine.
Yeah.
So the 8, and then we adopted Kristen in Ukraine. So she's Ukrainian born. And so there's 9 kids, 20-year range between the oldest and youngest.
And they're all the kids basically are involved in ministry, right?
Yeah, most of us. Yeah.
Across the whole, basically across Eastern Europe into Jordan.
So we have northern Russia, Siberia is where David is, and then Jordan, where Paul and Mel, my sister Mel and her husband, and Jen Renee in Jordan. That's where my mom is, and with the Bible college. She's
in Georgia.
I'm sorry, what did I say? Yeah, Georgia.
Georgia.
The country.
Tblisi, the country of Georgia.
Not the state. Yeah, so they're there, and then it's George, the oldest brother, is in Kiev planting a new church there, which is a really cool thing. And then Aaron and his wife, and then Robin and Marat are in Ternopil with us, so we have kind of the highest concentration. Right
there, yeah. So walk me through a bit, just how, from being 6-year-old through higher education, how did you get involved in ministry?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think with time, I didn't really, when we moved here, kind of was just kind of like, okay, whatever, didn't really kind of get what was going on. I think with time, kind of started to kind of search for who I was and what I wanted to do, and kind of felt like I didn't fit in, and so there was a lot of searching going on. I started playing soccer. That was kind of an outlet, and really thought that was what I was going to do. I had dreams of being this big soccer star or whatever. So I guess that's kind of maybe typical of whatever those years, up until when I was like 14, and we had started doing these, or my dad had started doing these conferences for the church, and then kind of a national conference, 2 every year. And this was kind of a new thing for everybody over there. And the idea of just getting away and just seeking the Lord, and just having more of a time to really just dig into the Word together, and just like a retreat kind of thing. And I had a really important soccer game on one of those days, and my mom, apparently, I found out later it was my dad through my mom who made me go to the conference instead, and I was really mad. But that was where the Lord just changed my life. Just by the Spirit was just showing me that I was really living a double life. I claimed to be a Christian, and I knew, growing up in a Christian family, kind of know all the right way to pray, and I could probably tell you, theologically, I probably knew quite a bit and could even share with somebody else, but just kind of that conviction that I was living a double life. The theme of the conference was for me to live as Christ, and from Philippians 1. And it was just like, Lord, at that, there was this decision that I want whatever I am and whoever I want all of that to serve you with whatever gifts I have. I had been they have music schools over there. I was like, which is it's like a secondary school. And so I'd already been playing piano, but wasn't really into it. Kind of realizing at that point that however it was going to work out, I was only 14, so I didn't have this vision of what was going to, but however it was going to work out, I wanted to develop that gift to the best of my abilities. And that's when I decided to go to music college. And it was just turned my life around. A lot of challenging things in the teenage years and growing and everything, but that was the turning point for me. So
because your mom tells a lot of stories about making you practice.
Yes, and it was after that. It wasn't like I was like, no, I was so lazy. And I fought with my mom all the time. She'd come in and catch me, like I'd be playing the piano and just reading something instead, I don't know, not really devoting myself to it, but so a lot of it was my mom that she recognized what, it's a really interesting thing, recognizing a calling, but then also recognizing that this is actually what I do want to do. But then so many distractions that kept me from really, giving myself to that. And she just had an amazing way of recognizing that and pushing me. And I mean, as a parent now, it's like, man, that takes so much wisdom. I don't even know how, to not just push her own desires, but to recognize that this is something the Lord's calling me to do and something that I'm wanting myself to respond to. So I really needed her through those years, So
Yes, yeah, it's pretty amazing because you're one of 8 of her children, and 9 that she would take the time to push you and say, hey, she could have said, well, I've got 7 more if you want to waste your life. But she didn't. She's pretty amazing, amazing woman.
Yeah.
So you go from music. I mean, you get your master's degree in music, but then now you're a pastor in Ternopil. How did that,
connect the dots,
Yeah.
So, and all through music college, I figured I was going to be a classical pianist.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to somehow in that environment, I didn't know how, I was going to do stuff. Parallel to that, I started getting involved in the worship team in Kiev, probably when I was 16, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Started playing and probably started leading worship when I was 18 or 19. Just kind of sort of naturally happened, and learned a lot through all those relationships. I'm a pretty, opinionated person. So really rubbed up against with the worship leader, there was a lot of just the Lord was chiseling away, me. But he was an amazing, so Slava Voloshin was his name, just really amazing guy and really a visionary. And I feel like it just got reiterated over and over again what we were doing this for. And between that and watching my dad and sitting in on a lot of informal meetings he would have with the team, Dad would always like to just kind of do breakfast and talk and just hearing what was important about what we were doing, and just that whole idea of church planting and evangelism is important, but healthy churches to where you can actually bring people into the fellowship, right, is essential. And so that just kind of became second nature. Of course, that's kind of everything kind of fits into that as far as doing any sort of ministry as the church, right? So I think that was kind of the general way. I didn't become a pastor until quite a bit later, but I think things were already kind of at work in that direction. It's interesting how many, and that too, how many worship leaders we know that have become pastors.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting thing, there's something that connects there, I think, is when you start to, and maybe it's just the vision for what is
when
really
you realize
needed
that worship leading, you realize that worship team, you end up taking on a role of pastoring those, and then you start to understand what it means to pastor, and then God, many times opens that door for you then to step forward and to become a pastor.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very much it. And I saw that a lot. Well, this is kind of jumping ahead, but then when you and I first did stuff together, because you were in a much bigger, in Budapest there, a bigger church, where you pretty much did have your own church within the worship team. There's so many. And just watching you interact was really important for me to see, and how you were, really shepherding and pouring into people's lives. That was, for me, that was essential to see, the people you minister with. You're not just a pastor to the people that show up, right? But and then, because when that happens, it's you're just using everybody else that's working with you to fulfill that goal. But actually seeing that these relationships are a testimony to that very thing. The relationships with the people that are on the team or the volunteers, in the church, it's, that pastoring extends, to that whole family of people in a big, and that's really, really important.
Yeah, you're creating a community that has a greater vision than just playing music.
Right.
It's about, the music is a tool for gospel outreach,
Absolutely.
And the Lord had to teach me that, but we all learn. Right. And I mean, you've learned. God taught you many things there in Ternopil. Now, being the pastor, we worked together a lot going back. I can't remember the very first worship conference, and those were always. a joy. That is a while ago. When we first came. The first time we came was kind of a disaster because we got stuck at the border. And,
I remember that, yeah.
And all of that kind of thing. We arrived like 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 in the morning, and the first session was 9 the next morning. That same morning, so it was pretty crazy. But then over the years, we were able to bring some other musicians and Hungarians and become part of what God was doing there in the Ukraine. And what's so interesting for me is that you're still the pastor of the church there, but God has not. That those things you kind of, in a sense, you kind of laid down the music side to take over the pastoring this church, but then God's kind of brought it back almost full circle with this ministry called Room for More. And I think one of the from my perspective, one of the most significant contributions that you've made to the country of Ukraine is the songs that you have written, and the collaborations, not only yourself, but the collaborations that you've made with other songwriters, and getting involved, and that's kind of what Room for More is all about. So kind of talk a little bit about the vision of Room for More.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so I probably do have to back up to when we moved to Ternopil, because we moved. Again, I wasn't a pastor then. I was a worship leader in Kiev, and we for a year, Steph and I, when we got married, we went to Ternopil, Western Ukraine, where my brother George planted this church, and we would just come once a month to kind of help out, and mostly that was just music, but then whatever else. It's a church plant, so there's stuff to do all the time.
You're wearing many hats, yeah.
Wearing many hats, yeah. And so, started building kind of a team there, and just getting that vision across of what the music ministry, what it really contributes to, and really connecting it to everything else, especially the teaching of the word, and how much they don't have to. I think it's weird when it's kind of at odds with, like here's the theological boring side, and here's the music, and like that's this show or whatever. Very intentional about bringing that together, and. So just I remember sitting in a lot of George's teachings, and we'd have, kind of like you guys do, we have that song response at the end, and kind of being frustrated that I'm listening and I'm like, we don't have that song, like for this message, to really kind of connect it. And parallel to that, reading John Newton's biography, and it talks a lot about his ministry in the small town of Olney, England. And a lot of illiterate people, and so what he would do is he would actually write a hymn for every Sunday that he preached, which just blows my mind. And that's where Amazing Grace came from. Yeah. And so just this idea of this is a tool. This is so practical, but it's a tool to remember the sermons and to really understand the gospel, and also emotionally communicate it and everything. So that's really where the songwriting kind of started to happen, and naturally that kind of bridged into wanting to teach more as well. And so then, became a pastor, and like you said, kind of set aside the music stuff probably for a couple of years. But then, gosh, I don't even remember exactly how it started, but it was just a... very much wanting to, I think, just seeing how influential music is, which is undeniable, right? I mean, it's something people connect to very quickly and easily.
It defines generations. It defines generations. Yeah. It becomes the story, the song of your life. The song, those songs connect you to points in your life.
Absolutely, yeah. And we all, you have that. I have. I mean, it's so. And wanting to just kind of hone into, using that to really get across the gospel story on a wider scale, and not just on a wider scale though, but to also really that kind of a witness of the church community that we were building. I mean, the songs really came out of what we were learning together, what we were experiencing together. I always say that, formally, I'm the author of the songs, but it's really it's the church that's writing them, because it is what we learned together. And so, just wanting to communicate gospel truths. Room for More actually comes from that story of the master who's throwing that banquet for his son, and he calls the nobleman, and they all give these excuses. And he goes, "Oh, just go and invite all these other people." And the servant comes back and says, "All has been done as you said, and still there is room." And that's kind of where it comes from. And so I think it was J.C. Ryle, I think, that said that it communicates that the heart of God, or the desire of God for people to come, is greater than their desire, right? Or his desire to invite is greater than their desire to come. And just wanting to communicate that in both the songs themselves, but then also in, like you're saying, the collaborations and stuff, to kind of, we want to, this isn't about me and building my own thing, but we want to, by example, show what we're kind of going for as far as the content and everything, but then also invite others in to contribute to that. And actually, I mean, something to pray about, and what we're hoping to do in the future, and Aaron and Thad are a big part of this, is they love telling stories and visual representations of that. So both animation and doing live plays and stuff like that. So just all sorts of creative ways to get across, right, the gospel message in so many different aspects and stuff like that. So that's that's kind of the idea, I think. Yeah. And then so part of that is that the thing about inviting other people in, and it's actually cool, in the last few months we have a couple of other artists who want to be kind of under the umbrella of Room for More, and help them release their stuff. But we run a studio there, so it provides an opportunity for them, right, to record. Been kind of developing that over the years, and you're a big part of helping me get to where I am with that, just learning recording, which is its own world.
Oh yeah. It's all-consuming world. Yeah.
All-consuming, yeah. So there was definitely a period of time where that was 10, 12, 14 hours a day. That's all I thought about. So, but that's been fun.
Well, we've had long discussions about things that our audience is not interested in.
That's right. No, and so often we start and we're talking, and there's a circle of people, and then just one by one people start to leave, and it's just
as we get into the minutia of it all.
Yeah, what ratio? Compressor?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a lot of fun. And what's so great is that, you and I both had that kind of same starting point as you talked about. There's not a song for this, there's not a song for that. And that was some of what the Lord put on my heart when I was in Budapest, and why I love what he was doing in Ukraine, because it was the same thing. We had a lot of translated songs, which were great, but translated songs didn't always communicate the language of Hungarian, the language of Ukrainian. It so much was lost in the translation. It was important to have Ukrainians writing Ukrainian songs about what God's doing in the Ukraine.
Absolutely. One example for me is Ukraine, we've had this war going on for 7 years now, and it's a very tragic thing. And back in 2014, right, when it all went down, we were in the States, and when we came back, it was close to Easter. And in Western Ukraine, Easter is huge. Specifically the religious, what do you call them? I can only think of the Ukrainian word. The traditions, right? That they would, perform all these different ritual kind of things, yeah. And it was a very jubilant kind of thing, and it was exciting, and I mean everybody was involved. Even if you were an atheist, I mean everybody's involved in it. But that year, I just remember it being so somber, and nobody wanted to celebrate it. It was very and just my heart breaking for that, and reading Matthew 11, right, where he says, "Come to me, all who are burdened and heavy laden." And it was out of this, so I wrote a song that's called just that, "Come to me," and it's very much came out of that conflict and that heartbreak, And just realizing from that it's like, look, there are things that are going on in Ukraine that are not going on in the United States. And, Chris Tomlin and Passion and all they can't write this.
Right.
It's happening here. It's the same gospel, but these events provide a unique, and we can actually contribute to the, to the global picture by producing from our context as well, which is what the U.S. is doing, which is great. But we need more voices doing that, where we're, because those contexts are what kind of take us out of our little bubble of like, okay, this is what suffering is, this is what praise is, this is what, love is. But you see a much broader picture when you see the different cultures and the different contexts from which that need the gospel and that are expressing the beauty of the gospel, right? So,
and to that point, a lot of your songs have transcended denominational lines. They've left the walls of your church, and they are now sung by so many different churches.
Crazy. Yeah.
You're always telling me you're getting videos from various choirs doing the song, or this group's doing the song, and you get to partake in the fruit of your labors as these songs kind of go out and minister to people in that way.
Yeah, man. From pretty much every branch of evangelicalism, and then getting letters from Catholics and guys who want to, and they really they've interviewed me. It's just like, it's just, and it's been humbling too. I think for me, just, I think even speaking about that context and culture thing, where, from I very much viewed things from within my own tribe, and I value so much what we have as Calvary Chapel, but I think I was getting stuck in like, well, this is how the Lord works. This is what it really is, and we're kind of it, Maybe I wouldn't say that out loud, but then just seeing, because I've gotten to go and do stuff with all these other guys now. It's humbling just to see how big, and that how much these songs resonate, and they are the gospel, and how this resonates across the board. Like, that's changed my perspective a lot. So
and music has such a great way of building bridges. And I saw that in Budapest, just being able to collaborate with so many different people from so many religious backgrounds, denominational backgrounds, and all of us music has that way of unifying us. And I think that's certainly in the Ukraine, I know in Hungary, in that whole region, the idea of being unified at the foot of the cross, and unified around the gospel is so important. And I think, what you're doing with Room for More, is essential, a piece of that whole puzzle of using music as a way to bring so many different people from so many different backgrounds.
That's so cool.
And,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I think what's cool about it too is that the journey. I think I've struggled for a long time, or I did struggle for a long time about, I need to choose, am I a pastor, am I, musician, like kind of like that was a tension for a very long time, and probably for a good reason. Probably it's good that it was a tension, and that I, had to kind of work that out. But it's cool how for me the journey hasn't been like, okay, musician, to pastor, and then back to music. It's actually kind of been now more kind of integrated, and they really inform each other so much. And part of it is actually being able to, through music, but because of the nature of the songs we write, it actually starts a lot of theological discussion, and it actually there's a more of a conversation happening around that, where I feel like it's actually kind of it's bringing a lot of musicians in to think, okay, we're not just about music and just this kind of external thing, like we want this to look like worship music or something, but we think theologically, and we think about how we as the church are witnesses to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so it's been cool to kind of see how that's integrated and really happy to be able to do both, actually.
No, that's exciting. That's exciting. Yeah. So as we wrap it up, what is something as you just look to the future, what do you think God's doing there in the Ukraine? With the conflict at the border, what is your sense, as you're moving forward as a church, just as the whole nation, to kind of give us a direction to pray for as a church?
Yeah, boy, that's a really good question. And yeah, that's very much hitting at the center of it when you talk about the conflict on the border, because I think it's, until something like that sort of happens where you are, the message and of the gospel, and then the outworking of it, are pretty theoretical in certain areas, like loving your enemy, and forgiving, and so working that out. Ukraine is, what's happened in the last 6 or 7 years has really just brought more to the surface what's been pain for a very long time, right? And so I do believe it's a struggle for the church, a struggle worth having, to really be asking the question of, like, what is our identity as the bride of Christ? How does that work itself out when we're at war? And what's the difference between that and my patriotism or nationalism, even, and I think it's a challenge, I'll say, as a pastor in a very nationalistic city in Ukraine. It's a real challenge to be working through that question. It's very hard to separate for a lot of folks. They feel very passionate about that, and then of course, justice is a very important thing. It's essential. But kind of how that works itself out as a follower of Jesus, So I think that's something to be praying for in the future, is just, I can speak for our church, like I want us to be thinking the question into everything, like I'm a follower of Jesus, right? How does that work itself out in how I view politics and my neighbor and anybody who speaks Russian,
right?
I would say that's and for us as in ministry, it's not about just attacking that head on. I think that's not very helpful. But to be just walking through, it's kind of the long game of like just walking through the Bible and praying that as we do that, it does just, the Word of God is living and sharper than any two-edged sword, and dividing, it's like we want to see that just be the challenge and transform, and not, for people to not just look at it like just selecting everything that fits my cause, but letting it really transform our lives and our views and everything.
We have a higher calling in Jesus.
Yeah.
And we're so grateful as a church to be part of what you're doing in the Ukraine, and we look forward to all that God's going to do, and especially bringing unity in the midst of this conflict. And so, you can connect. We'll put information in the links below, or you can just contact us at the church, info@whitefieldschurch.com. And if you just want to get in contact with John and what he's doing over there in Ternopil, and just be praying for Room for More, for Aaron and Dara, and for John and Stephanie as they move forward with what God's doing. And there's so many exciting things going on. And John did kind of give the Cliff Notes version of his family being in Ukraine. And there is a book called Distant Lands, and we'll put a link in there. There's an Amazon. Distant Fields. Distant Fields. And we'll put a link in the description, and you can order that on Amazon. And a great book. I highly, 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 highly recommend it. It's a fascinating book about his family's journey and specifically his parents and how they came to be just show up with all their suitcases there in Kiev in 1992 with 8 kids, and it's mind-blowing, actually. And so we'll put some links to their music in the description as well. Some of the songs we sing here at the church, Crucified Messiah, See, and then the one they shared with us on the Sunday morning that they led worship, This Is Our God. We'll put that there in the link as well, and be looking forward to new music coming from them. But join us next time. Go to whitefieldschurch.com, like, subscribe, YouTube channel, and Facebook, and your podcast. Give us a rate and a review. It just certainly helps us out, and we look forward to doing some more of these mission extras. We just kind of bring God's mission that goes out from these walls and goes out and affects people on the ground, and we look forward to meeting some more missionaries in the future. But God bless you.